Hey all, JTC here, and today we're going to be going over the results of the worst talent in Vermintide poll. If you're out of the loop, a couple of days ago I uploaded a video asking you guys what you thought was the worst talent in Vermintide based upon 4 different talents that me and my Discord came up with in a debate. I created a poll, and I would say in a couple of days after you guys had voted in the poll, I was going to make an update video and give my thoughts and opinions on it, and that is what this is. To be honest, this poll pretty much turned out the way I thought it was going to. Almost 800 of you guys voted, thank you to those who did vote, and Ricochet was overwhelmingly the talent that everyone thought was the worst, which came in at number 1. Number 2 came in at Barge, Indiscriminate Blast came in at number 3, and then lastly, I Shall Judge You All. Now, before I share my opinions on what the worst talent in Vermintide is, and I say if I agree or disagree with the results of this poll, there were a couple of comments that caught my eye that I wanted to talk about first. I don't understand how Ricochet is on here. Sure, it's not the most useful talent ever, and sure, not what I'd pick for some serious cata tryharding. However, using the Hagbane with it and shooting the floor right in front of Horde or anything else does insane AoE, and Blooded Shot makes that even better. It's by no means a contender for the worst 5 talents in the game. Now, a little later on in another comment, I'm going to be explaining why these 4 talents are the worst talents in the game in my opinion, so I'm not going to be getting into that right now, but what I will say in response to this is, just because a talent is really good with one weapon does not mean it is a good talent. Realistically, a talent should work no matter what weapon you're going to be using, and it should be equally good across all weapon selections, or to a lesser extent, it should be better with some weapons and not as good, but still a good or an okay option with other weapons, but that's not the case with Ricochet. It's passable with Hagbane, and completely useless with every single other ranged weapon for Kerillian. I think I'd pick I Shall Judge You All. The other ones can be slightly useful for hordes, but there's no good reason to debuff minor enemies with Witch Hunt. Even on Legend, Beastman infantry can die in a few light attacks anyways, so it just seems redundant. I completely agree. The talent is redundant, which is why it's not good. The other thing is, the other talents are not the one that are slightly useful for hordes, it's I Shall Judge You All that is only slightly useful for hordes. The other 2 are vastly, vastly more useful. I think the worst is actually Lingering Flames, considering the minuscule DPS it provides while taking up Famished and Volcanic, I guess, Flames tier. The fact that it just gives an infinite burn doesn't mean that you can't reapply burns and kill monsters/enemies much faster anyways. So first I would say don't compare anything to Famished Flames, because Famished Flames is a stupidly strong talent that is way too strong for this game in my opinion and should be completely deleted, but Lingering Flames, I feel you're actually underestimating it a little bit here. Lingering Flames is niche, that is quite true. However, whenever a Lingering Flames moment comes up, it is very useful because you can just apply a dot and then hold block and just survive while the whatever it is burns to death. Is it slow? Yes. Is it a little, I'm going to use for this word for the lack of a better term, noobish? Yes, but at the end of the day, it's a PvE game. If it works, who fucking cares? And at the final sentence, when I'm going to assume you used a double negative and you meant to say that it means you can't reapply burns and kill them faster. That is true. However, you can reapply higher dots. This was a bug they just fixed a couple of months ago, I believe. But it's a very recent fix. Originally, Lingering Flames worked where it would take the first dot applied, and that would be the only dot that applied, and you couldn't reapply a dot. However, now it works differently, or I think they fixed a bug. Instead, now it'll take the higher dot, so if you apply a higher dot to an enemy, it'll override the lower dot and apply that higher dot, which makes the talent much better than it used to be. I'd say Slayer's level 30 perk where he gets increased damage while jumping. Since it's only a 150% increase for what tends to be only one shot, it's pitiful as only 3 regular strikes would do the same damage. Yeah, I would agree with you until you realize though that the talent works with bombs and barrels and also stacks with the strength potion, which I don't fault you for not knowing if you didn't know, because the talent doesn't explain that. And because of that, I actually think it makes that talent have the highest DPS potential out of any talent in Slayer's arsenal. As far as I can see, all of these talents can have either a fun or maybe even useful aspect depending on playstyle. Ricochet works fairly well in tunnels like Hunger in the Dark and with Swiftbow. Barge gives you more room for dodges instead of being unit blocked by Slave Rat, so you're left with either eating a Chaos Warrior's overhead or eating a Chaos Warrior's overhead. Indiscriminate Blast isn't great, true, but it's an option to have some AoE if you're running Rapier Crossbow because you want to focus on a single target. I Shall Judge You All makes it easier for your team to simply delete that patrol instead of trying to sneak around it and pulling it anyway because 2 seconds later, Waystalker's True Flight Volley aimed at an assassin took a detour. Not gonna lie, I have a feeling that this guy has experience with that. So Ricochet does work well in tunnels, but when you think about it, the very tight enclosed tunnels that you're talking about are very, very, very rare in Vermintide. They pretty much only exist in Hunger in the Dark, and even then, most of the map is open or open enough that Ricochet is not going to be useful. Ricochet is incredibly useful in tight enclosed corridors, but completely useless in anything medium-sized, open, or anything past that. On top of that, Swiftbow is not useful with Ricochet, only Hagbane is. On that note, Hagbane with Ricochet is still not that great because you cannot control where your arrows are going to ricochet. So that helps with tight enclosed spaces because they're guaranteed to ricochet around the horde, but if you don't use them in a tight enclosed space, they're just going to ricochet off into the distance and you're not going to get any value from it. On top of that, even if you do use it in a tight enclosed space, there is a very, very real chance that it's just going to come back to you or ricochet around one of your teammates, and at that point, you're just really screwing over your team, and there's nothing you can do to stop it other than just not shoot. Barge, I actually completely agree with, but Indiscriminate Blast shouldn't even be called a shotgun. It should be called an inconvenience gun because all it does is inconvenience your enemies. It has no damage, no cleave, it doesn't go through shields, it has 0 armor damage. It's not good at all. It's better to just take Griffin Feet and use those to horde clear, or hell, you can use double shotted and just spam your ult into the horde while aiming vaguely at their head, because it's a horde. You will, I guarantee you, most of the time be hitting their heads more often than not and getting that refund. Then for I Shall Judge You All, you don't need your team's help because you can just run Fervency and left-click spam and kill them all by yourself, or you can instead run Unending Hunt and help your team kill the patrol by passively buffing them with extra crit chance, and if the fight goes on long enough, you can get 2 ults instead of only 1, which doubles the value you get from the ult. So what do I think the worst talent in Vermintide is? All 4 of these talents are not good. However, there is only one talent in this list and in all of Vermintide that not only completely negates your ultimate, but actively makes it worse and lessens the impact that you as a player have with your character. And because of that, the worst talent in Vermintide has got to go to Indiscriminate Blast. Sorry, Wyo.